Hello, everyone. It's Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby here with David Buchanan. We are 1 week away from the Tony Awards, and it has been an incredible season for plays. So before these 2024 awards, we have to talk about what's winning on the play side of the categories. David, for best play, there's I think, a pretty incredible lineup here. Stereophonic has been out front in our odds. It is the most Tony nominated play of all time with 13 nominations. So do you think it's winning? And if so, is there anything that can stop it from winning?
I do think it's a terrific lineup of shows. I do think Stereophonic is winning. No, I don't think anything else is going to win.
Well,
How about
those other plays are there's Jaja's African Hair Braiding, Mary Jane, Mother Play, and Prayer for the French Republic. Um, I do think I do think Stereophonic is winning. I would be surprised if anything else were to be named. I think Stereophonic has taken off in a really once in a lifetime way within the theater community here. Mary Jane and Mother Play are the other two that are still open. Um, I think they're very well respected, but I just don't know that any of them have enough to take the trophy away from Stereophonic. And Jaja's, I really love Jaja's African Hair Braiding, but it was just so long ago that I don't see it unseating the front runner at this point. But we might have a closer race in Best Play Revival, where we just have three contenders because it was a lighter year. We have Appropriate, An Enemy of the People, and Pearly Victorious. How are you seeing that race shake out?
I have Appropriate. I still have Appropriate. I do think Pearly, and we'll talk about this in the other categories, is despite it being closed for a while now, is coming on very strong during this campaign season. I think it's on people's minds. It's on people's televisions through PBS. If you haven't watched it on performances, you are able to do so. Yeah, I think it's those two. I don't think any of the people. I mean, it's possible it could win. I think it's a well-respected production and it is competitive in some categories, but I feel pretty good about Appropriate. I think the fact that it's still running, it's done so successfully well at the box office, it transferred theaters, it's got a lot going for it. How about you?
Yeah, Pearly Victorious getting the great performances slot on PBS right as we're voting was a really smart move.
Brilliant.
Kudos to them. And I do think it's between those two. Um, I do think there's spots where Pearly Victorious can win, which we'll get to. I don't I don't think it's going to be quite enough to take Revival. I think Appropriate um, has two major things going for it. One is that it's just a huge success story. It transferred from second stage at the Hayes Theater to a commercial run because of how successful it was. So that's kind of like a major feather in its cap. And it also, because it has, even though it's a revival, it has never been on Broadway before. It's a revival because of the classics rule of the Tonys. Um, but because it has never been on Broadway before, Brandon Jacobs Jenkins will win a Tony if this wins. And he is, I think, a figure who people want to give a Tony to. He's a really admired writer who has written a ton of plays recently that people have really fallen head over heels for. And I think that is another reason, beyond just people liking the play, why Appropriate, I think, has the edge in this category. But Pearly Victorious is, I think, going to get a pretty sizable share of votes. I just think in this particular case, it's not quite enough to take down the front runner.
Yeah.
Let's see. One of those places where it could prevail is lead actor in a play, with Leslie Odom Jr. trying to get in for Pearly. We also have Jeremy Strong, An Enemy of the People, Michael Stuhlbarg for Patriots, William Jackson Harper for Uncle Vanya, and Liev Schreiber for Doubt. Who are you going with here?
I'm very unsure about who I'm going with here. I've had Jeremy Strong out front all season. I'm very tempted to switch to Leslie Odom Jr. Part of the hesitancy, and I know this is kind of an argument that sometimes applies, sometimes doesn't, is the fact that Pearly is closed. I'm going to kind of contradict myself later in the conversation. and if I'm voting for it elsewhere, predicting it elsewhere, I'm so unsure as to, like, I don't think either of those performers are a slam dunk clear kind of front runner. So I'm really flip-flopping. I do think what's in Jeremy's favor, not only is it running, and that one they just announced today when we're recording this that the production is recouped, so it's been a financial hit, and he kind of makes the show, right? Like, it's a great production, but you're going to see him. He's giving a star turn. He's terrific in it. I just don't know if the passion is there. So I'm kind of on the fence. I also just think too, like, even just thinking back to last year when Sean Hayes won, that was last year, right?
Yes.
I couldn't keep track of the years, but he won in a category where extraordinary performances, and he was the only one that was open. And I do think that is a somewhat of a factor, even if you can watch Leslie on great performances, which, the other ones didn't have that advantage. But that's a lot of words to say. I'm really not sure. So maybe you can bring some clarity, because I know you're predicting Leslie. Is that right?
I do have Leslie right now. I've gone a lot of ways in this category as the season has gone on, because I think most of us put Jeremy Strong out front when Enemy of the People like was announced and before we had even seen it. The hesitancy I have with Jeremy is that, sure, he's coming off of a really hot show, winning an Emmy. He's the central figure in this performance, and it's a great role, but I do feel like the performance is kind of internal in a lot of ways. He doesn't have as like big, grandiose moment to shout and scream and emote as some of these other guys have. And then I saw Patriots, and Michael Stuhlbarg is doing the most acting. It's a really great physical performance. He's like this little imp, like running around the stage the whole time. It's his first time back on Broadway in years, I think maybe 20 years, I don't remember. And I thought, oh, maybe he'll be the front runner because it's that type of performance that usually wins, but they were really apathetic apparently about Patriots, and he's the only one from that show that got nominated. People were similarly passionate about William Jackson Harper and Uncle Vanya, but again, he's the only thing from Uncle Vanya nominated, and that's hard. That's a major hurdle for those two guys. So that kind of that sort of leaves me with Leslie Odom Jr. And I know his show is closed, but he has the type of big performance. There's a lot of acting. He gets to be both really funny and really dramatic at points. And he gets to exist at that heightened level, and he gets to, monologue, and it kind of checks off a lot of boxes for me. Sure, it's a closed performance, but we also get to go and watch him on PBS. Again, it was a really smart decision for them to release this thing, because you can remind yourself of this thing that you really loved back in February or whenever people would have seen it. So I think it's not a slam dunk. It's going to be a really close call. Uh, but I have Leslie picking up another Tony for this. But it's going to be close.
Possible. I'm so on, again, this is one of those categories I'll be thinking and rethinking until Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's look at the other lead category here with lead actress of a play, where Sarah Paulson has been out front for a long time, but we have Jessica Lange for Mother Play, Rachel McAdams for Mary Jane, Amy Ryan for Doubt, and Betsy Adam for Prayer for the French Republic. Is Sarah still the one for you?
Yeah. You?
Yeah, I do think, though, I mean, when I saw Appropriate, I was like, oh, she's gonna win a Tony for this for sure. But I will say a lot of people have really been won over for Jessica Lange and Rachel McAdams, who are giving both incredible performances in Mother Play and Mary Jane, respectively. I just wonder if, I don't know that people have like fallen into, one or the other. And I think when you have a really strong front runner, as Sarah has become in this season, you need everyone else to like unite behind a person in order to like take down the front runner. And I don't know if people have done that, because Jessica Lange has won recently, and I think has won for like, what many people consider one of the greatest American plays of all time. So it feels like they've already given her this huge crowning achievement. So I just feel like it's kind of Sarah Paulson's time in a way.
Yeah, I think right after the nominations, I thought it would be a closer race between Sarah and Rachel McAdams, who I think is extraordinary in Mary Jane. I really like that play, and I especially liked her performance in it. I think with Sarah winning the Drama League Distinguished Performance Award, that's the one where all the performers of the year are in one category. They anoint one winner for, and they can't win again. I think the momentum has just been with Sarah Paulson. Um,
Mhm.
and that has kind of swayed me into saying, well, it's a close race, to saying, okay, the kind of mood and the tide seems to be with Sarah, so I'm not going to deviate from that and overthink it.
Yeah, and talk about a role where you get to scream and shout and emote like she's doing. It's like her whole character is just like, I'm gonna fight every freaking person on stage, and it's kind of glorious to watch. So I think it's probably her over anyone here. Well, let's move on to featured actress in a play, which is another place I have someone from Pearly Victorious ahead. We have Carrie Young, Pearly Victorious, and Sarah Pigeon from Stereophonic are the two who are dominating our odds. There's also Celia Keenan Bolger from Mother Play, Quincy Tyler Bernstein for Doubt, and Juliana Canfield, also from Stereophonic. I think this is a true coin flip
Hmm.
between Carrie Young and Sarah Pigeon. I think they have really run away with this category. And this is out of every category this year, if there was one where I could wish for a tie, it would probably be this one because I mean, everyone here is wonderful, but I really think these two women are giving really exceptional, like special performances that when we look back on this, no matter who wins, it's like, wait a minute, that person lost for giving this? Like they were able to like give such an incredible performance and they still lost to Tony. Like seem bizarre. But I think it's neck and neck between these two.
I recently switched to Kara. I've had Sarah Pigeon for a long time. I do think if they are going to, and this is what is so complicating to me, is I think she is the most obvious choice if you want to vote for a stereophonic performer. Like she is the heart of that show. So in some sense, it's hard for me not to predict her as Diana, who's just she's brilliant in the show. She's the centerpiece of that ensemble, I think, in my opinion. Um, but Kara gives a great performance, and she's been everywhere. Like that campaign, like she's made history in terms of the nomination. They obviously love her and her other roles. Like this is not like this is the first time she's been nominated. They clearly have an affinity for her as a performer across all of her work. And she's just been really great about getting out there and talking about the performance. I mean, I do think in the last few weeks, the tide has, again, overused, I guess, analogy at this point for me, but the tide seems to be turning towards Kara, especially with that great performances. When you can see her talking about the show and then say, oh, let me go and watch it or revisit it, that's very powerful, I think. So that gave me a bit of the edge to finally predict her. But yeah, I don't know. Sarah Pigeon is so fantastic in Stereophonic too. I don't know. Another kind of head scratcher for me.
Yeah, I guess normally the fact that the show is still open for Stereophonic would tip me towards Sarah Pigeon. But I think the great performances broadcast for PBS is great for Kara, as well as just like there's they just have gotten to know her now. Like this is her third consecutive nomination. She's the first Black performer to do that, to get three consecutive nominations. And they're all for really different roles. And so she's now become like a constant presence where it feels like, okay, well, at some point she's gonna win, right? They keep just like saying, I like this person. So at some point she's going to win. It feels like now might be that time. And her role in Pearly Victorious is kind of a co-lead. Like I could have seen them making an argument to put her in lead actress. It's a really, really sizable role. So she just gets to show so much, and it's so different from her past nominations. that I have trouble moving away from her, even though Sarah Pigeon is so great. Um, I just think I feel more confident about Carrie Young than I do about Leslie Odom Jr.
Yeah,
winning
I
for Pearlie.
yeah, I agree with that. I also just wonder, not to overstate the point, but how much Juliana Canfield, maybe complicates the race for Sarah Pigeon, just in terms of, this category in particular, we have seen vote splitting in years past. Like this, we've had, co-stars nominated in this category over and over again. Um, I just wonder, like, I could easily see. I also love Holly in Stereophonic. I love Juliana's performance.
Mhm.
I could see Stereophonic fans also voting for her. So in such a close race where every vote is going to make a difference, I wonder if that even tips the scales ever so slightly for Kara.
Maybe. I just feel like everyone's united behind Sarah Pigeon at this point. I was really hoping, so I'm a voter in the Dorian Awards, and I was like, oh, they're both up for our featured category. Maybe that'll give a clue. And they tied. They both won the featured category there. So I was like, it's very close between these two women. Um, where vote splitting maybe will come into effect, or maybe not, just because I think everything is neck and neck here, is featured actor in a play.
Mm.
This is the category I think is the hardest to predict out of any acting category at the Tonys. We have Will Brill for Stereophonic, Eli Gelb for Stereophonic, Tom Pasinka for Stereophonic, Jim Parsons for Mother Play, and Corey Stoll for Appropriate. I think Corey was leading our odds for a long time and was kind of pushed out front for most of the race, but I don't think any person here, like when I try to order them, the person I always have on fifth feels like, oh, well, that doesn't feel like a fifth place performance. It just feels like they're all super even to me. How are you thinking of this category?
I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do with this category. I do think it's possible that a stereophonic performer can, overcome their internal competition, even though, Jim Parsons stands alone and Corey Stoll stands alone. Um, I just switched to Will Brill for the first time in a long time. And the reason why is I do think like, so here's how I would break down the stereophonic guys. I think Tom Pasinka has one of the hardest roles in that show because that role needs to be so odious at times. Like, the audience
Mhm.
really doesn't like him, but that's so hard to do and he does it so well. So I think there's a universe where maybe he could win because he shares so much time with Sarah. Eli Gelb, I think, is like the heart of the show at times as well. But then, they've awarded very comedic scene stealing performers in these featured categories. And you have Will Brill doing that houseboats 10-minute monologue.
Yep.
I just think that that's a moment that voters will remember. Maybe more than the kind of, smaller emotional nuanced beats of the other stereophonic guys. Like that is a standout 10-minute plus monologue. And they also, like I said, they love comedic performances. So that's my thinking right now. That will likely change multiple times. But where are you thinking right
Well,
now?
you'll be pleased to know I have two switched to Will Brill. So we
Great.
can go down in the ship together. I think Stereophonic is popular enough and this category is wide open enough that the multiple guys won't matter. I have not heard of any consensus in this category. It doesn't matter. I think that Corey Stoll and Jim Parsons are like the sole nominees from like I think they're all even. So I'm trying to think of what are the small things that will push someone over the edge. That could be Corey Stoll fighting with Sarah Paulson, inappropriate. It could just be that, and we don't have to overthink it, and he's going to win. But he's not as bombastic as Sarah Paulson is, I think, in that role. So, and Stereophonic is just so beloved right now and is really, really hot at the moment. I think Will Brill feels like the kind of like Michael Aronov
Mm.
win in featured actor, like that featured player who gets to kind of come in and shake up scene and shake up the energy. And he is the one person who's really physical and really comedic in this show, so he stands out. Um, his material is a little bit front loaded in the play. He doesn't have quite as much at the tail end, but I think the fact that his stuff is so memorable and is so different from anything else in this ensemble, his character really stands out in a way that could push him over the edge. He's also the only person not making his Broadway debut in Stereophonic. He does have a, history with the theater community. He's already a known quantity to them, so he will already have fans and people he's worked with that would probably love to vote for him. Um, I could see Eli Gelb. He's kind of the I think I have him in second place now, Eli Gelb.
Too.
He's more like, my hesitancy is that Eli Gelb is more like serving a vibe instead of like having a big moment. He's the audience kind of waypoint into the story. He's also very funny, but he doesn't have like a big kind of showy monologue-y moment like some other guys do.
Yeah, and Tom has those big fight scenes with Sarah Pigeon, which, I really can't shake. I can't shake the feeling that, like, if you're voting for Sarah Pigeon, you may be voting for her scene partner for so much of the show. Like, I don't want to. I have Tom like way down, so I'm not.
I have him in last.
And I'm seriously like, I can't shake the feeling that maybe people who are voting for Sarah, are like, well, who does she do so much brilliant emotional acting opposite? It's Tom. It's Tom
Right.
so much of the time. So I don't know. I honestly wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if any of them won.
Yeah, I think this is another one where it's like, release the votes. I want to see like what single digits separate all these people, because I really think it is. I don't know. I think Tom Pacinka plays a villain, but not the type, like a villain that's hard to root for sometimes. And that when it comes down to actually winning is kind of tough to win with a character like that, just because people have a negative reaction to your character. Because he's really nasty. He's just like, he's great at it. He's great at being nasty, but he's super awful to her.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going with like the more Will Brill plays like the physical,
Mhm.
he has a problem, like he has a huge alcohol problem, but he tries to overcome it, not always successfully, but he's trying, and you can like laugh along with him for a lot of the play. So that's why I'm cemented on him, but I will switch probably between Will Brill and Corey Stoll and Eli Gelb for the remainder of our week here as we go through.
Yeah.
Um, let's move on to Best Director of a Play, where we have a great lineup that includes Daniel Aukin for Stereophonic, Kenny Leon, Pearly Victorious, Anne Kaufman, Mary Jane, Whitney White, Jaja's African Hair Braiding, and Lila Neubauer for Appropriate. Who are you going with here? Is it another Stereophonic sweep?
I think so. I don't think it's a slam dunk. I do have Daniel. I think Lila could do it. Appropriate, very popular, really well directed. I just think wrangling this 3 hour and 20-minute behemoth of a show, making the pace so, doing it so effortlessly where the audience is not feeling the runtime. The musical performances, everything in that show is so well calibrated. I just do think, I'm not wrestling too much with it. I don't think it's 100%, but I feel pretty good about Daniel. How about you?
Yeah, there's like a slight little ping that I'm like, oh, Lila has a lot of things that she's kind of that really hot of the moment off-Broadway directing star that they like to push in here, because she has like The Wolves and a lot of other things that people have really fallen in love with very recently. And Appropriate is great work as well. She also has Uncle Vanya on Broadway right now, which is like another example of her work that people can go to. But I just think Daniel Aukin, I mean, just making those conversations that are actually very normal and could be very mundane but he's turned them into something really compelling and fascinating in Stereophonic. I think it is a massive achievement. So he will probably be winning there. Um, well, we've gotten through all of the top of the line categories. Let's look at some of the design categories. Scenic design. I know a lot of people have a Stereophonic checked off here for the massive recording studio that they have, but I feel like Appropriate is going to take this one because the set has such a major moment at the end. The entire epilogue is all of this uh this change as the house undergoes a change. Not to spoil things, but what do you think, David?
I think it's between the two. I really do. Those are the two I'm most considering. I have Stereophonic right now. Um, I do think the detail in that recording studio is so precise. The equipment works. The sound booth is a real recording studio. The performers can't hear what's going on outside. I mean, it really is not just like realism, but actually real. And I think that, I think it could, I think that alone could help it. And I also think the fact that it's probably going to sweep a lot of awards. Like, it is not the technical juggernaut of, say, a Lehman trilogy with that huge set and blah, 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 but it is going to be a juggernaut in terms of wins, I think. So I could see in these kind of close categories where they might just say, love Stereophonic, it's great work, love Stereophonic. So but I think you make a great point about Appropriate, but it's definitely the two. I'm not 100% sold on Stereophonic, but I think we can narrow it down to those two.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Do you also think they're going to have another name check moment for Stereophonic and costume design? I know a lot of people have that for its 70s recreations, but I have it ranked behind two close shows. Here we are back to that argument again, but I have Jaja's African Hair Braiding winning, and then Pearly Victorious, and then Stereophonic for costume design. How about you?
I have Jaja's in second. I think there's a strong likelihood of that happening. I do have Stereophonic, partly because I think it's going to just do so well across the board. And also those costumes to me, not just like having them in my memory recently, but I remember them very vividly, like the way that they communicate the period, but also the shift in time, like especially in that last act where they've left and gone to LA, very kind of different, more affluent styles. Like so much of that is so still in my mind that I just, that's what I'm predicting for that reason.
That's a really good point. I forgot about that, but that's a really good point. Maybe maybe Stereophonic will claim another one. I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like Enemy of the People has the
Mm,
most traditional
mm.
type of design that wins here, but I don't know a lot of people predicting it. Um, but those are like the more elaborate period pieces in that show. Um, but I don't know. Do you think that has a chance?
Maybe I do have it. I actually do have it winning another design category we haven't talked about.
Oh,
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know. That might be foolish. Yeah, period costumes do very well all the time. I think Enemy has an outside chance. I do think maybe the two that we've talked about already are just overall more likely.
all right. Well, let's see. Lighting design of a play also features these shows. We have Appropriate, Enemy of the People, Grey House, Prayer for the French Republic, and Stereophonic. I have Appropriate winning this one again, similar to, I could be wrong here, but similar to the scenic design reasoning. I feel like the lighting also plays a huge part in the end of the show, in that epilogue, as you watch the house. And there's also like a lot of really nice day to night cycle things going on with some scenes at twilight. There's some scenes totally in the dark with just like one piece of lighting illuminating them. So I have Appropriate out front, but what are you going for?
Yeah, that's a great point, and we've seen that kind of time cycle, like when I think Long Day's Journey won, a couple of years ago. Speaking of Jessica Lange,
Which
and
I
like,
think I was the only person to predict.
yeah, very good. This is where I have an Enemy of the People. I think what they do in that space with the candlelight, very evocative. They use the house lights to really great effect during that kind of town hall meeting. And I was also just revisiting like what people were saying about these shows when they were opening, because the season has been very long, Sam. Very many shows. And I think this is Isabella Bird, like got a lot of really strong notices for her very subtle and strong work in this category. I mean, not in this category, on this show. She's done a couple shows this season. And I do think that kind of really evocative, different uses of lighting in that circle in the square space could win. So I'm going out on a limb for Enemy here. It might be the only award it wins. It might win Jeremy, as we discussed, but I feel okay about it. I'm going on a limb, but I'm not terribly shaky.
Enemy of the People does start with like showcasing the lighting. For anyone who hasn't seen it, they do this whole lighting of the lanterns around the stage and pulling them down. It's a huge moment that helps you kind of, as an audience member, sit back, like calm down, dive into the world of this show a little bit. So it's a good choice. It is something that could take down one of the front runners in this particular category, I think. I guess I'm just going for more obvious in your face lighting
Oh, it makes sense.
rather than the subtler one.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I mean that, maybe by Sunday I'll have switched to appropriate.
Well, our final category is sound design of a play, and we have appropriate, Grey House, Jaja's African hair braiding, Mary Jane, and Stereophonic. This one seems pretty clear to me for Stereophonic, right? I mean, we're in a recording studio, they're recording these songs. The sound design is incredible. Maybe if Grey House was still open, I think the kind of horror movie soundscape of that show was really cool. But that is, not only is it not open, it is like I think over a year ago at this point. So that is very out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people. So are we team Stereophonic for this one?
Totally stereophonic. Great point about Grey House. It is just so long ago. I love that it got nominated. I'm glad the nominators had that long of a memory. I think with the humongous voting pool of final round voters, and they're going to see Stereophonic in the last couple months, that I think really cements it. And we were talking about, is it going to win best score? To see our discussion of that, go to the other video, the musicals predictions, because we discussed it at length over there. But it would be nice, like if it wins best score, I think all the more reason, it might win sound design too.
Well, that's a good point because it is in the hunt for best score and best orchestrations. How many wins? Stereophonic is already the most nominated play in Tony Awards history. How many wins do we think it can pick up?
I'm looking right now at my my predictions.
Because I have definitely play.
I have 5 and maybe more. So we both have play. We both have Will Brill for the moment for featured actor. Neither of us have Sarah Pigeon at the moment. Sorry, Sarah. Daniel Ocken, that's 3, right?
Yeah.
Maybe score. We don't have it for score right now, but maybe. I have scenic design. I have costume design. I have sound design. So that's 6.
Wow. Well, you kind of have made me think differently about costume design for it. Maybe I'll switch it there, but I have 5 right now.
Yeah, maybe.
So
I don't know how much we're toying with score. I was definitely considering switch, between Suffs and Stereophonic. I've gone back and forth. So it's in the range of like 5 or 6, maybe 7. I mean, could it win 8? I mean, I don't know. If it wins score and Sarah Pigeon, that would get my tally to 8, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
No, but I do think it will probably be the most winningest show or most winningest play anyway of the night.
Yeah.
Out of all of these, I think they're in for a good night. And if you're in that featured actor in a play category, all of you should write down a thank you acceptance speech because it's going to be a close one. Well, we'll see how many trophies Stereophonic actually picks up when the Tony Awards air this Sunday the 16th. So stick with us and see how well, how poorly, how right or wrong we do with these predictions. Thank you, David, for joining me.
Thank you, Sam.